good day, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman, who's been going deep and in depth on the Mishnah in particular. We're on Mishnah, or Chapter 2, Mishnah 8, Part 9. He's just dissecting it thoroughly for us to make sure that we get the points that the sages conveyed. And Rabbi Coffman's had a beautiful week. His one daughter got engaged. Baruch Hashem. We wish the Coffmans well in everything that they do, and may they be blessed with as many grandchildren as they want and can handle. And we just wish them well. We are so thankful that Rabbi Coffman takes the time out of his busy schedule to continue this class. It's so exciting. So let's just jump right in and see how the rabbi's doing today. Rabbi Coffman, you're live on the air. I'm going to turn it over to you, sir, and I'm going to try and zip it up.
Always a pleasure to be here. I want to thank all the well-wishers. This is daughter number 4 that got engaged. And the great rabbi once said, it's good to have daughters because you can pick your son-in-laws, right? It's a beautiful family I know for many years, and whatever. It's just been, world win over here that, we made the Chaim on Monday. This coming Monday night, we're going to have the engagement party. Going to be a lot of people there. It's going to be a lot of alcohol flowing. It's going to be a lot of, definitely going to be a lot of fun.
Tough.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely going to be a lot of fun. And whatever, we're, still looking for a hall and a date and all that. So definitely going to be before Passover, hopefully in the second month of Adar, hopefully somewhere in March. Wow. God willing. So we are in Chapter 2, Mishnah 8. That's where we are. We are in Part 9, and as I always promise, there'll probably be a Part 10, Part 11, and probably Part 12. I mean, there's quite a bit to speak about here. So we spoke last week. We spoke about the more witchcraft,
more wives.
What do you call it? The more wives, the more witchcraft, and the more maidservants, the more lewdness. That we spoke about. We spoke a lot about immorality. We spoke a lot about marriage. The Jewish way. The Jewish way in in marriage and how it all works, etc. We spoke about the secular world in marriage and all that. So now we're going to continue. Next part of the Mishnah says, the more manservants, the more thievery. Now, obvious question is, what's the connection? Right? What's the connection? If I have more manservants, it's going to be more thievery. So a thief, a Jewish thief, what happened? What happened to them way back when they stole something? They ended up living with a Jewish family in order to get rehabilitated, right? We do understand that, if someone does something against the law, they go to jail. Most likely, they come out worse, right? They come out worse than when they went in because of all the negative, and, terrible influences in jail. And, there is a rise, we will say, we will call it as it is. There is a rise. People go into jail. What happens to them? They become Muslims. Right? It's a common thing. I don't know what the stats are. People who become Muslims or become Christians, born again or whatever, but they find religion. A good place in some ways to find religion when you basically hit rock bottom, right? And now you're in jail. But usually I would say many, many times, people that go to jail, they come out worse.
Yeah.
They come out worse. Now, over here, when a thief, right here we're talking about a thief, that when he's caught, so he gets rehabilitated by a Jewish family. Now, what does that mean? What does it entail? It means the master has to treat this person even better than he would treat his own kids. Meaning, if there are only a couple pillows in the house, you give it to him. Right? You don't make him, clean a bathroom with a toothbrush, so to speak. You got to treat him with proper respect. You tell me he's a thief. You're right. He did something against the law, 100%. Right? But he's going to come out better. He's going to understand what Jewish law is all about. He's going to understand what Judaism is all about, right? Some people, when they came back to Judaism, right, Jews didn't know anything about Judaism, and, they started looking into Judaism a little bit. What brought them closer to Judaism more than anything else? Jewish food, right? They got involved. They got invited for Shabbos. They see family interaction. They see the beauty, the beauty of it. And, I will mention, because I'll brag a little bit here, that, Monday night we made this l'chaim. So my, my new son-in-law's family, came over. It wasn't like, we didn't know them, etc. But when they came, it really felt like family. It doesn't always work out that way. But since we know the family many years, etc., and a bunch of the married kids came in, after the parents came in, and the younger kids came in. They happen to be Levites, so they like to sing, which is also good. So we were, they came, about 9:30. My daughter and their future husband, they walked in about quarter to 10. They didn't leave till midnight, right? Almost to midnight. Other people came in. Friends of my daughters came in. Other family friends, came in on both sides. It was whatever. It was pretty loud. I asked one of my neighbors on Friday. I said, "Yeah, did you hear? My daughter got engaged." I said, "What do you mean? Did we hear?" The whole building was shaking because they were singing. Whatever. It was amazing, right? It was an unbelievable thing. I always say when Torah works, works well, it goes all the way up to heaven. When it works bad, it goes all the way down. But that was it. People were singing. Again, there's food, there's alcohol, whatever. It was a lot of fun. It was a tremendous amount of fun. And, so when a person sees that, right, just like Monday night, there are going to be a lot of people there. We know a lot of people in common, but there are going to be a lot of people there. I went to a kiddush today. A friend of mine's son had a girl, right? So the father of the groom used to be the administrator of a yeshiva where I pray in. So I went there Friday night like a king. It was like, wow, what a beautiful match. Unbelievable families, whatever. So when I went to this kiddush, you know what they say, yeshiva guys sing for their supper, right? So they were singing, the place is rocking. I'm like, guys, take it a little bit easy. You got to save some, for Monday night. And, my son-in-law's got, 20 of his friends, coming from up north, from his yeshiva. This place is going to rock. It's going to be unbelievable. That's what it's all about. When somebody sees something like that, you cannot be affected. You cannot not be affected, right? So someone comes and sees a family, 6, 7, 8 kids, whatever it is, and they're all around the Shabbos table. And they're all singing, saying words of Torah. I mean, probably a lot of chaos going on at the same time. But when somebody sees that, that goes a long way. Without trying to break them down and say, no, you got to believe in God. You have to understand where God comes from. And you're trying to throw everything out. Forget that. The greatest, thing of bringing someone back is bringing them to a family. It's the food. Food in Judaism goes hand in hand, right? It's all about the food. Listen, it's about singing. It's about a lot of different.
Right now, Rabbi, my wife is baking cinnamon buns, and the whole house is smelling like cinnamon buns.
So you can relate. So, yeah. But when someone sees that and sees the beauty, Shabbos does it by itself. Festivals do it by itself. Invite someone for a Passover Seder. You go through the Haggadah, and all these different things. You're recreating history, etc. It's an unbelievable thing. So a person's going to say, what's going to happen over here? This thief is going to go to this family. What's the family going to do? What are they, psychologists? They're going to break the thief down, say, listen, you don't understand, blah, blah, blah. No, they're going to rehabilitate the thief the way he needs to be rehabilitated. But again, as we said before,
100%.
you cannot degrade him. You have to give him better food than you would normally eat. You have to give him pillows. You have to give him quilts. Even if there aren't enough to go around, he gets first, right? You can't allow him to clean the toilet with a toothbrush. You don't degrade the person. You build them up. Right? So therefore, a thief, when he goes to a Jewish family, he's going to be built up. He's going to be what? He's going to be rehabilitated. Right? People who go to jail today, just the opposite. They don't get rehabilitated. They come out worse. As we mentioned before. So we mentioned as well, at the same time, the master has an obligation to watch over the wrongdoer. And if he sees bad behavior, He's got to say something, right? He's there to be rehabilitated. So the master has to rehabilitate him, right? The master is obviously obligated, right? He has to say something. If he sees bad behavior, he doesn't just let it go, right? You're not allowed to let it go. He has to protest, otherwise he'd get punished. Why? Why would the master get punished? He didn't do anything. He didn't do anything wrong, right? He didn't steal. He's trying to rehabilitate this person. But what's the problem? The problem is, if he's got to bring him up to snuff, what he has to do is, if he sees him do something wrong, he's going to protest, right? We have to know when to protest, how to protest, but he's the one responsible. If he's the one responsible, he sees bad behavior, he looks the other way, that's a problem. Parents who see their kids going in the wrong direction, they also have an obligation to say something. Today, people are afraid to say anything. Why? Because, their kids will go further, and do what they want to do. But who's to say I'm allowed just to look the other way, right? There has to be a balance. If it's something egregious and this child is going to have influence over other children, then you're going to ask a real serious question what to do. Because you don't want the other children going astray based on this bad influence, right? We don't want that. At the same time, to throw the child out, that's like a last resort. An absolute last resort. The Avos-Chapter of blessed memory said that the elementary school for boys that threw out Trotsky, not one of the best students they ever had, causing mischief, other things, and the school decided to throw him out because of his negative influence, right? And look what Trotsky did, right? Brought communism to the world, right? Caused tens of thousands, millions to die because of it. Thousands, millions of Jews not allowed to be taught about their own heritage. The Avos-Chapter says the cheder that threw him out, the school that threw him out, look what they're responsible for. Now again, a person could say, but if they're causing damage to other students, if they're causing damage, can't leave them around, right? It's going to ruin the whole school. Okay, but if they're going to throw him out, then they have an obligation to find another place for the person to go. Because if they don't find another place for the person to go, they're killing them, right? And that's, today, unfortunately, you have a lot of people going up because, they didn't fit. They didn't fit in the system. They didn't fit in the system. They didn't get the proper health, and even if they have to throw them out because of negative influence, either they didn't find another place, whatever the case is, they cause more damage, right? One of the single biggest factors of kids going off today is because they don't fit in. Either they don't fit into the system, or let's say they have learning problems. I mean, there are a lot of issues. There could be family problems, right? There's not.
Rabbi, often we see a lot of tunnel vision in certain groups as well. I mean, as I've mentioned to you before, I mean, my last several years when I was still in Christianity were horrendous, only because I was leaning towards, some of the classes I had been taken from rabbis and sharing some of the Torah position, and they just turn on you.
That's always a bad mistake. Sharing information with the opposition, never good.
Well, no, you still believe that the struggle is for discovery of truth, right, and honest validity and true relationship with Hashem, and sometimes people will vilify and criminalize needlessly, right?
Right. There are stories of children getting embarrassed in public.
Yeah.
When they get embarrassed in public by, by the head of the yeshiva or the school or whatever, they get destroyed. They absolutely get destroyed. Now, there are cases like that. There could be, God forbid, cases of abuse. I mean, there are a lot of factors. There are a lot of factors, but let's make it easy. Let's say the person, the child, has learning issues. They're ADHD. They're bouncing off the walls, right? Or let's say, God forbid, they get in with the wrong crowd or something like that. Because the spiral effect goes very quick. It goes very quick. Now, the heads of the schools, the teachers, they have to figure something out because they don't want everyone going down that path. Now, if they try this, they try that, they try the other thing, and let's say the kid doesn't pan out. He doesn't pan out, doesn't fit the system, whatever the case is. They have an obligation to find this child another place to go. That's what they have to do. Because if they don't, they just throw them out, etc. So they're responsible. They 100% are going to be responsible for what happened to this child. Now, again, there are a lot of factors involved, right? I'm just saying in general, it's not simple. Definitely not simple. But at the end of the day, the Rabbi Chaim over here said, you throw somebody out, you're going to be liable for what happens to them. Now, that's a very graphic example. You look at Trotsky over here. Who knows what was going to happen to Trotsky? You think in their wildest dreams, the school thought Trotsky was going to be this whole big influence in what he did and what he brought to the world? I don't think they thought about that. They thought about his influence on everyone else, right? Which, again, which makes sense, which totally makes sense. At the same time, you don't know what a kid's potential is. You don't know. So therefore, you got to be extra careful. Even if you have to throw them out, you have to find them another place. You cannot leave them hanging. You cannot leave them without a school. I mean, this destroys kids' self-esteem. Because a good friend of mine would say we live in a marshmallow generation, right? Teflon generation, tissue generation. There's very low self-esteem, extremely low self-esteem. So now in this case, you destroy it. That's what can happen. A person, their self-esteem 100% gets destroyed, right? So here, I heard a great rabbi once say that, for children today, you have to build them up. You have to tell them how great they are, how righteous they are, how righteous they can be, and all this. I said, isn't flattery a problem? If you flatter, if you give them too much flattery, tell them how great they are, they're going to get an ego. They're going to think, maybe they can walk on water. They can think they can do anything. Look how great they are. Look how much I know, blah, blah, blah. So he said, don't worry about it. If they get a big ego, I can deal with that also. That's what this rabbi told me. He said, I'll deal with that also. But that's not the issue. The issue today with children is not about, it's not about ego. It's about how small they really feel, right? It's about having low self-esteem. Because the reality is, they start learning from a young age, and they look at how great their predecessors are, how great rabbis from the previous generation, great rabbis from the Talmud. They're like, come on.
Try to emulate, yeah.
You try and tell great stories about them and how righteous they can be. Some people think it's a good thing to do that. Some other people think it's not a good thing, because who's to say they're gonna reach that? Says my Rebbe's Rebbe Rav Moshe Schneider, blessed memory. My Rebbe would say in every single shmuz that Rav Schneider gave, this is what he would say. You have the ability to be the next Vilna Gaon. You have the ability to be the next Rav Chaim Brisker. You have the ability to be, you choose the great rabbi. And someone went up to, Rabbi Schneider and said, you know who you're talking to? You know what this generation is? You're talking, 70, 80 years ago. You know who you're talking to? How in the world, from where we're coming from, from this cream puff generation, how in the world, marshmallow, whatever you want to call it, right? How in the world can we reach that? We don't have that capacity. We don't have that mental capacity, right? Baruch Ber, a blessed memory of Baruch Ber Leibowitz, who was head of the yeshiva in Kamenetz, said, if I might not have reached the level of learning like Rabbi Akiva Eiger, right? One of the Torah giants, more than 100 years ago, 150 years ago. He said, I might not have reached that level, but I strive to be like him. If I strove to be like Baruch Ber, if I strove to be like him, what would I be like? Who would I be? Right? In other words, we got to think big. We got to think, as Ramosha Schneider said, we have that ability. We have that ability to be whoever we want to be. Someone's going to say, come on, I don't have that capacity. I don't have that brain capacity. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, Hashem Yikam Damoy, God should avenge his blood, one of the famed students of the Chofetz Chaim. Rabbi Chanan said on himself, and he had the famous yeshiva in Baranovich, and he said about himself, I only had average intelligence. So how did he become one of the Torah giants? It doesn't mean you have to have 120 IQ, right? But how did he say on himself how he became anything in Torah? So what did he say? He said it was based on hasmada. What's hasmada? Hasmada means constant learning. Constant learning, constant review. Didn't waste time. Every spare second he was learning.
You try to review at least 4 times. Isn't that proper?
Yeah. You continually review. The rabbis in time of the Talmud reviewed everything they learned once a month. We barely remember what Rashi said on last week's Parsha, right? Wasn't he a shortstop for the Yankees? Oh yeah, I forgot. Like, who was he anyway? Maybe he played for Hamilton. Oops, they lost, right? Oh, sorry, forgot about that. Anyway, that was once. Anyway, point is that we think very small. We think very small. My Rebbe's fond of saying, if a person thinks small, they'll end up small. But if you think big, you may not end up big, but you won't end up small.
Yeah,
you got to strive.
For the moon and you'll hit the top of the telephone pole.
Exactly. You have to strive. You have to work hard. You can't be lazy, right? And the more self-sacrifice a person has for Torah, the more God is gonna open up the channels. That's the way it works. Because Torah weakens a person, right? The more a person learns, the more tired they are, right? It physically weakens a person because it's hard to learn. It's hard to learn 5 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, right? It taxes the brain because there are a lot of different details, right? Tremendous amount of details. And then trying to work out all the details, get the practical law, this, that. It's a lot of things. A lot of things to learn. So a person could say, come on, I live in this generation. It's not possible. What do you mean it's not possible? How is it not possible? Right? I mentioned off the air that, this match with my daughter, 2 parents have Ivy League degrees. Well, actually, one didn't finish, but, one went to Columbia, my alma mater, right? He went to Columbia. His wife went to Cornell. So I said, look at this. Look at this. We have Ivy League. We went to Ivy League schools, right? Cream of the crop. And look what we produced over here. Meaning secular education means nothing. Means nothing. But you know what? At the end of the day, both of us started from scratch. We started from scratch. Maybe knowing how to read Hebrew. Maybe not understanding very much. But I started my learning, when I was 18. A little bit older. Right? But I started from scratch. I remember learning that, when I first went to yeshiva, learning how to learn. We started learning Mishnah. Learning Mishnah without commentary. People don't normally do that today because you got to learn with commentary. If you don't learn with commentary, very hard right. To try and make heads or tails out of anything, right? But I see the wisdom behind it because it makes you analyze, ad nauseum, right? Analyze what's going on. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda said like this, Rabbi Meir said like that. Why are they saying what they're saying? Oh, one brought a verse, so what does the verse have to do with anything? Got to go look it up. Got to try, but you're missing information. The commentaries give you the information on a platter.
Oh yeah,
right? But you got to think. But you got to think about what they may say before they say it, and then when they say it, now you understand where it comes from, right? But bottom line is, I'll use myself as an example. Bottom line is, I started from scratch. I had a little bit of an advantage only because I knew how to read Hebrew. I had an advantage because I've been to synagogue. So I knew more or less what went on. So now I had to add a whole bunch of more things. Synagogue I went to, chopped the prayer book up in half. So he said, certain things or very few things, whatever it is. So I had a little bit of an advantage. A little bit. So now you're talking many years ago. I'm not going to show my age here, right? You're talking many years ago. So you might say, okay, he went to an Ivy League school. He maybe is more intelligent than a lot of other people. Maybe. Don't give it so much credibility over here. Maybe, but I had such a thirst for learning. It was an unquenchable
drive can
thirst.
carry you so far.
So I took it in, and I learned more, and I read, and I read, and I read, and I caught up. A number of years later, I used to learn at night for like an hour, an hour and a half at night. I would go through things that I missed. I try to, catch up on different things. The Torah portion of the week, Jewish philosophy, Musar, like different things. So someone asked me once, they said, where'd you learn all this? I said, during the day I was learning what I needed to learn and learning how to learn. And at night I try to make up, ground. At the same time, when it came to a holiday, I tried to learn all the laws, as much as I could about the holidays and kept reviewing, going over it year after year. You acquire knowledge. These things are all building blocks, but you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. I didn't have that education when I was younger. Right? I went to Hebrew school for 5 years. Most people never learn anything more than when they learned in Hebrew school because they had such a bad experience. Imagine you could go out play with your friends, but now you got to go to Hebrew school for 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week. You want to be playing ball, but it's splat in the middle of the afternoon, 4 o'clock. Come on. Not enjoyable. Nobody wants to be there. Teachers don't want to be there necessarily, even though they're getting paid, probably peanuts. But whatever it is, there are people that just get demoralized from Judaism based on that. I wrote it in my ebook. I called it the Hebrew school blues, or, something like that. That people get really turned off, tremendously turned off. Now, somebody like me, I happen to enjoy. I like learning other things and whatever, but it only took off years later. So therefore, I would say, people say, well, it's too late and this and that. Look at Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva hated the rabbis, right? And for 40 years, didn't even know the Aleph Beis. Imagine at the age of 40, going to your kid's school, trying to fit in those little chairs, relearning the Aleph Beis. Imagine the humility he had to go through. But look at what Rabbi Akiva became. Look what he became. Through him, the oral law was passed down, even though he had, 24,000 students were killed. Right? All these students were killed. He still passed Torah down. Right? He had a certain number of students and they passed the oral law down. It happened through him. When did he start learning? At the age of 40. So Rav Leff should be well. Was telling the story. I think it was by a bar mitzvah. And someone came to a synagogue in Miami. He was talking about Rabbi Akiva and the ability, learning and all that. And so this ignoramus comes up to him and says, wow, Rabbi, that's great. But Europe was a different generation. Rabbi Akiva didn't live in Europe. First of all, it was 2,000 years before. Right? 2,000 years before, but look what he became. He said, nah, Europe's a different generation. And even if it was, this is 2,000 years earlier. What does that mean? That means there's potential in all of us. Tremendous amount of potential. And everything we learn and that we understand is only a gift from above. Because a lot of this makes absolutely zero sense. 80% of the Torah we don't understand. Right? I mean, we have to understand it. We have to, we have to know what to do, practically speaking. But 80% of the Torah in general doesn't make logical sense. We have to fit our mindset into the mindset of the Torah. That's what we have to do. And it's not easy. And not only that, if you're starting very late, what does that do? Person has to eat a lot of what we call a lot of humble pie. Right? I remember I was a hotshot, third year. Right? I was third year university. So I left my third year and I went to Israel to learn. I didn't get any credit for it. So I had to, I had to take on extra classes, when I came back and all that. But I was, here I am, I was taking Jewish classes, where I was in the, in the conservative movement, whatever. I was taking classes. Here I am thinking I'm a big shot, Ivy League school. I come learning. They're like, Coffman, read the Mishnah. I was like, no, I'll take the 0. They're like, Coffman, read the Mishnah. Explain the Mishnah, right? Humble beginnings. I started at the bottom, right? I started at the bottom. No question about it. But at the end of the day, every little step you took was knowledge. They were building blocks. Sometimes you forgot what words meant. You didn't understand the context. I mean, there's a lot of humility. A lot of humility.
Sure.
First of all, you understand the root of the words. Because Aramaic is similar to Hebrew. Different words, just different endings, right, of the words. But there are a lot of new words you're not aware of. So even though I took Hebrew for a couple of years, I understood how to break down words here and there.
Syntax,
but you have to understand.
Dialogue,
You have to understand it in context. You have to look up words, in a dictionary. Now it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier because ArtScroll came on the map. They translated everything. So you can't use ArtScroll as a crutch, right? It's good to use if you get stuck in what certain words mean. You get lazy, don't want to look them up or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, they provide a tremendous service because they allow people who don't have the background in order to learn Torah, in order to learn Talmud. Tremendous. The first Talmud that there was with a translation in English, as everyone knows, or if they don't know, you'll know now, is called Sonsino. Right? Sonsino, people said the English was so bad, the Aramaic was easier. It was easy to go through the Aramaic because the English was so bad. So I came before ArtScroll, right? Before ArtScroll. So it's a lot more difficult. We had to use this big dictionary. The person who wrote it was pretty much a heretic. But we had this big fat dictionary called Jastrow. Right? His father was Robert Jastrow, was the famous physicist or whatever. In any case, he broke down the words. He would give you the context, and different things. But that's what you had to do. You had to look things up. So, here you're learning. You're going obviously at a very slow pace. But now you're getting the ideas. You're getting you're learning how to translate. You're learning how to put sentences together. Now you got to understand what it means. Then you get to look at some of the commentaries. It's a slow process. People want everything instantaneous. What ArtScroll did was they cut to the chase. They give you the translation without you having to do any work. You don't have to do any work. It's there. So some people use it as a crutch. And if you use it as a crutch, you will never learn how to learn on your own. But you have to take it step by step. It's hard. It's a hard process. Take you at least a couple years full day learning to be able to read the Talmud by yourself. But you got to put in a tremendous amount of effort. You can't be lazy. Because if you're lazy, then what happens is you're just going to forget, and you're not really going to get anywhere. So I'll say based on myself, and others who started from the beginning. Okay, those are humble beginnings. But guess what? Over a certain period of time, then you start asking questions. Hey, Rashi says this over here, but now I get a contradiction. Right, I got a contradiction. Right, I'll give you an example. Rabbi brought down this week's parsha. Right, it says that we finished the book of Genesis. Going to go into the book of Exodus. At the very beginning, it says that when Yaakov goes down to Egypt, that's the beginning of the enslavement. Right, that's the beginning of the enslavement of the Jewish people. But there's a problem. Rashi later says it only happens if you look at the very beginning of the. Let me see here. You look at the very beginning of the book of Exodus. Right? Let's look at the beginning of the book of Exodus. Book of Exodus tells me, chapter 1, says these are the names of children of Israel coming into Egypt: Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, blah, blah, blah. And all the persons, verse 5, and all the persons emerged from Jacob's loins were 70, and they were fruitful and multiplied, blah, blah, blah. That's when it starts. When that entire generation, Rashi says, when that entire generation of Joseph and the brothers dies out, that's when it starts. That's when, they were fruitful. They multiplied unbelievably. Women had 6 children in one shot. Imagine 3 births, 24 kids. 24 kids jumping off the walls. Can't even imagine, in a place that's like 35 meters, right? Good luck. Kids go play outside. No room inside, right? So imagine this is what's going on. So what's the problem? So Rabbi says clear. Rashi says later. Come on. That's not when it happened. That's not when it happened. It happened when the entire generation died out. When the entire generation died out and they were in Egypt, that's when it starts. When a new king, they say it was a new king. Some say it was an old king. He just made new decrees. Interesting. I'll just throw out another question. Someone mentioned earlier to me at this Kiddush. Someone said, Yaakov gave Pharaoh a blessing. Right? Pharaoh asked him, why are you so old? And he said, I had a hard life, blah, blah, blah. And he gives him a blessing. So when Yaakov dies, So when Yaakov dies, he allows Joseph and the brothers to go. So how come he didn't go? How come Pharaoh didn't go? He gave him a blessing. Wasn't my question, right? When the Torah giants asked that question, this person told me over what he said. He said he asked the question. So he asked me. He says, what do you think? Right? So I gave a simple answer. I don't know if it's true or not. But I said, if Pharaoh forgot who Joseph was, either he didn't know who he was because he was a new Pharaoh, or let's say he was the old Pharaoh and he just ignored everything that Joseph had done. That means that doesn't have a karas hatov. What is a karas hatov? He doesn't thank, someone doesn't thank someone for something they did for them. They don't show gratitude. So here, look at everything Joseph did. Oh, I don't remember him. What about everything he did for you? And he saved Egypt. No, I forgot about that. I don't know if that's 100% true. I'm just throwing out there that he didn't show gratitude. He was low in the totem pole and showing gratitude, right? And he says, who's this God, that I should listen to him? What do you mean? Like you're God's gift to the world? Who's this God? Created the heaven and the earth. Okay, well, let's get back to Rashi, right? Seemingly a contradiction in Rashi, right? So maybe ask the question. I'm just pointing out that that's a different way of learning. Understanding what Rashi says and what the commentaries say, that's one level. Bringing out contradictions and why commentaries disagree, that's another level. That's a whole nother level. But it takes time to build up to that level. You don't do that overnight. You don't, unless you're a genius, you don't do that after a year, learning day in and day out. You ask certain questions here. It takes time. It takes time to develop the way they think, right? But you have to learn over here. You have to understand. So I mentioned humble beginnings are not necessarily a bad thing, right? My kids had it easier because they're learning from the beginning, so they don't have these issues, right? But if you're learning later in life, it's harder. It's harder to learn the lingo. People have difficulty learning languages. The older they get, different things, right, becomes harder. But you know what? When you put in the efforts, when you put in all the self-sacrifice, you get the reward. You're going to see the reward over time, right? So I mentioned, last week, in a number of classes, I mentioned about divine providence, right? We're not going to go into it. I'd spend the next 2 hours speaking about divine providence and how divine providence works. You see it with matches between kids and families, and how it works, and all that. But when you see something like that, something that I merited to see Monday night, and how the families are, my son-in-laws, two of my son-in-laws already know. They already know the groom-to-be. They know a bunch of the married siblings. Why? One of them lived in the same street, next building. So the mother of one of my son-in-laws said, wow, they're very good friends, with the mother of my son-in-law to be. And they said, now we're going to be related for grandkids. It's a beautiful thing, right? But they know each other. My other son-in-law learned in the yeshiva, knows them, right? He also knows them. He knows a bunch of the married siblings because that's where they pray.
Right, it really helps unite and bind, eh?
Right. So when they came in and everyone's together, everybody knows each other. Like last Shabbos, a week ago, one of the married sons was there. And I already knew this is pretty much a done deal. They're going to get engaged. So I was like, what's going to be? Now, most people would never say anything until it's done. I got a big mouth. That's the way it goes. Right. But I said, no, what's going to be? What's going to be? We just had a big laugh. I said, you might be in my house next week. You just don't know. I mean, I knew, but, whatever. It's never done till it's done. That's really the bottom line. Right. But you see something like that. We had a blast. We had an absolute blast. Why? Because you see how great Torah is. And you see when Torah works, it goes all the way to heaven. It works in such an unbelievable way. And not when it doesn't, you have 80% into marriage, you got assimilation, you got all that. Fine. Right? But at the end of the day, self-sacrifice, that people put into Torah, that they put into their kids, it's not for nothing. Right? You see the end result 90% of the time, 95% of the time. And then when you see that, you feel like you're $1 million. I went to see my Rebbe on the fast day on Tuesday. They didn't want to let me in the door. I was like, wait a minute, I got a mazel tov. So I put my foot in the door. They let me in. The smile, worth millions. Worth millions. So, okay, there are certain things I wish in my life would have turned out a little bit different. Okay, but look at that. 25 years, connection, one of the Torah giants. And you see everything fit together, flying over here, right? It's unbelievable. Okay, you're not going to have everything that you want, per se. Not everything, works out 100% the way we think. Fine. When you see something like this and you see the divine providence behind it in so many different ways, you're going to tell me, someone can say, oh, that's a coincidence. Yeah, I got 10 things I'm going to speak about. I spoke about this, at the L'chaim. I'm going to speak about on Shabbos, the Shabbos Sheva brachas, which I always speak about, those festive meals after they get married. You have 7 days. So I'm going to get up Friday night and I'm going to say all the divine providence. All the divine providence. You're going to say, what? There's no God in the world? I'm going to give one example, right? Because I could speak for days about this, but I'll give one example. One example. So I was in Israel for 13 years, right? Most people know I ended up in Chile. From Chile, I went to Lakewood, New Jersey. And then 3 years later, after being in New Jersey, I came back to Israel, right? Which people never do, right? I left with 6 kids, with 5 kids. Sorry, I came back with 6, right? Which most people never do. Right? Most people, if they leave, they never come back. They get stuck. And thank God I didn't get stuck in America. Good. So I came back. I didn't go back to the same place I lived before because I had no luck there. I lost all my money when I was there, whatever. There's a lot of embarrassment there. So I went to a community not far away. Right? They had a good mixture. Good mixture of older people, younger people, whatever. So I said, okay. Someone found me an apartment. I said, okay, let's try it out and we'll see. I got my kids in the school. And I've been here the last 13 years. Last 13 years. The longest time I've ever lived in one place. Now, based on that, 2 of my kids found their soulmates who happen to live on the same street, one building apart from another. So I made a joke. I said, by my next daughter, who's 16, I'm going to check out the building before and the building after. So we'll see. Maybe we'll make another match. Now, with everything I've been through, in the last 20 years, 15 years, right? Now, the place I picked to live could be, you could say it's a fluke, right, in certain ways, but obviously it's been orchestrated from above that I had to be in that place in order to find the matches for my kids. Now, my last daughter got engaged. My oldest daughter, who set up a school for girls that, she had a bunch of speakers speak, once a week, whatever. And this speaker asked her, do you have, maybe I know somebody for my son. She said, tell me about your son. Blah, blah, blah. She got to get the perfect person, my sister. And she made the match. They went out, and that was it. Now, everything that my daughter went through, there were a lot of difficulties, different things. And she set up this school, and she set up this learning program, blah, blah, blah. Now, what are the odds? She had to go through a heck of a lot in order to do what she did, in order to set up what she set up. Based on that, you want to tell me the father of my son-in-law is going to be the one who's going to give the main, he's going to speak like 2-3 times a month, to this group, and that's going to be the one who's going to marry my daughter? What are the odds? So someone can say, come on, I can figure it out on my calculator. It's 1 in 100,000. It's 1 in a million. The odds are almost zero. They're almost zero, right? In many different ways. Many, many different ways. Right? You can't say this is logical. Totally not. Because look at everything my daughter went through. I'm not going to go through it. But my daughter went through a lot of different things. And based on all the things she went through all the years, started this school, right? Started this learning program, right? But she had to go through all these different things first. So how can you say that's random? Totally not random. Not at all, right? So now the fact that all this is going to happen, it's all being orchestrated from above. I don't think there's any question. Not to mention the fact, okay, I left Israel. I ended up in Chile. I went to New Jersey. I came back to the community where I ended up marrying off 2 of my kids. The odds of that are very slim. Very, very slim. Someone could say that doesn't prove God's existence. Maybe it doesn't. But it'll be a major factor. Someone's going to think once, twice, 3 times. Because the odds of something like that happening are very little. right? I'm going to say it's almost about zero, right? But when you see the divine providence and how it works, this daughter got engaged. Who made the match? Her best friend, one of her closest friends. They go on a walk a couple weeks ago, right? And she says, "No, what about my brother?" It's not like she doesn't know the family. It's not like we don't know the family, and that's how it started, right? And that's how it started. So based on that, you're gonna say, "Oh, that's also coincidence, maybe." And the fact that she lived in their house when she was between 3rd and 8th grade, and and her friend was by us many, many times. Now I don't know the family. What are the odds? When you see shidduchim, when you see a match between a man and a woman, and you see the families and all that, one knows this one, they know now. We have a lot of people overlap. How can you say we live in a random world? It's impossible. Impossible to say. That's what I spoke about it before. That's what I spoke about at the L'chaim. Right? I mean, I said a few jokes in between, but it's unbelievable. You have to be blind. You have to be absolutely blind not to see it. And what I told my wife before I went to synagogue Friday night, I said, I'm going to walk into this yeshiva like a king. Because he was the one, right?
Yeah,
my
head
daughter's,
high, sure.
My daughter's future father-in-law, right, is the one that ran the yeshiva for years. For years. I got a son-in-law from that yeshiva, whatever. I walked in, I'm like, wow, unbelievable. This, that, such beautiful families together. How can you say that's random? You can't. It's impossible. Person can be an atheist and say, oh, that's a coincidence. Okay, what about this? Oh, it's also a coincidence. If I bring you 8, 9, 10 different things that happen along the way, you still want to tell me it's a coincidence? You could tell me, but it's called cognitive dissonance. Right? Totally called cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, a lot
right?
Of
I don't want to digress, but
sure.
It's an unbelievable thing to see. Why do I mention all this? I mention it because, every Jew has the merit of their forefathers. Right? They have the merit of their forefathers looking after them. So, my family has been demolished, been destroyed by assimilation, by intermarriage. Right? But if you go to your great-grandparents, right, or your grandparents, there was already Torah there. But then, it got watered down. But if you go back a couple generations, everybody was religious 200 years ago, 250 years ago. Some more, some less, but you didn't have this. You didn't have the assimilation rate that you have today. Right? Not even close. If it comes along, 200 years later, and you see what America's done, and what's going on, assimilation, intermarriage, all these different things. But you know what? Somebody who comes back, it's only the merit of their forefathers. They come back and say, now look what you have. But there's been a lot of self-sacrifice. There's been a lot of suffering along the way. No question about it. But at the end of the day, you start from humble beginnings, and that can overcome a lot of different things. But you have to be serious. You have to have a lot of mysterious nefesh, a lot of self-sacrifice. You got to put the pedal to the metal, and you need absolutely heavenly influence. If you don't have any heavenly influence, it's not going to go. Right? It's definitely not going to go, because the fact that we learn Torah, and in the Torah that goes into our heads is a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. The Gemara in Kedushin says, person has an evil inclination. God created an antidote. It's called Torah. But guess what? If you don't have heavenly help, you'll never overcome your evil inclination.
The light bulb never goes on. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's further than that. The Gemara says if you don't have heavenly help, the evil inclination you'll never overcome it. All the Torah you learned is not enough. You need the heavenly help with that. So the fact we can overcome anything is based on that. Right? So, when I mentioned about humble beginnings, and people can say, well, you got lucky. I suffered a lot. Right? I mentioned a lot of things I've gone through. Has not been easy in many, many different ways. Right? But at the end of the day, 3 out of 4 of my kids, the first person they met, they went out with, they got married to. Now, other people have a lot of difficulty with that. Right? And I definitely know that. I definitely know a lot of stories. Someone told me the other day, their sons took years. Took years of dating, this, that. I don't know, too finicky, not, whatever the case is. Right? This is an absolute blessing. An absolute blessing. Someone's going to say, okay, so now you got to put all the money down. Now you got to put the money down. Okay, not everyone has money either. things offset in a certain way. You don't get everything.
But it's living.
You don't
It's
necessarily
living,
get
isn't it?
everything.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, with or without money, I feel like $1 million, right? For that reason, because you see what you have over here. Imagine, I mentioned I didn't want to spend too much time on this, but imagine, people come in, your son-in-laws walk in and they know everybody there. That doesn't always happen.
Comfortable.
It's it's comfortable. We call it in Yiddish, we call it being Hamish. It's really unbelievable, right? So with all the, what does God want to see over here? God wants to see A, that you're serious, and B, you're willing to do whatever it takes for the sake of Torah. That's what he wants to see. Unbelievable self-sacrifice, which gets into the segue because we say Torah is always interrelated. We said before, if the master sees bad behavior, right, by this thief, he's got to protest, right? He can't look the other way, right? He can't look the other way over here, but you have to know how to protest. You can't just let things go on. Another reason stealing is found by someone, right? Someone who has slaves, is because it's difficult to guard from them, right? Difficult to guard the house from them.
They plot, yeah.
They could, they could fool the master, right? They could steal from him. They could do other things, right? So you don't have eyes in the back of your head. You're not always prepared per se. But comes along the Vilna Gaon, Rav Elijah Vilna, more than 250 years ago, explained from the Gemara in Pesachim. The Gemara in Pesachim 113b tells us there are 5 things Canaan, right? So one of the sons of Noah, right, commanded his sons. Now it's going to be a little bit strange. What did he command his sons to do? He commanded his sons, one of the things was to love stealing. He says, I want you to benefit from this world. I want you guys to enjoy other people's property. Now, this is a major problem, obviously for a number of reasons, right? That's why children, right, like my son today, the age of 10, what Gemara are they learning? They're learning the 2nd chapter of Baba Metzia. Talking the whole tractate speaks about damages, and the laws, whatever, a lot of different things, without getting into too much. But what does the 2nd chapter talk about? Lost objects. And when you're obligated to return lost objects, does it have a sign? Do we have a name on it? Is it put in a group that it looks like someone dropped it there? Different things. Maybe the amount of money someone dropped is going to be a sign, whatever it is. Why do they learn that first? Why do they learn that Gemara first? To show that the world is not ownerless. To show that there's responsibility. You have to take responsibility for your actions. There is an old adage. And as the adage goes, don't we say finders keepers? Losers weepers? No, that's not a Jewish concept. If it doesn't have a sign, and there's, the amount, it wasn't put in a certain way, there wasn't a certain amount of money, this and that, it looks like it dropped for someone who says who says I'm not allowed to take it. If there's a specific sign, right, that's a different issue. I'm not allowed to take that. Someone probably dropped it there, right? They left it there for a reason.
And they're going to miss it.
So therefore, what's my obligation? I have to put signs up. I have to hold on to it. I'm not allowed to use a lost object. Could be certain things every 30 days. If it's a book, I have to shake it out, make sure it doesn't get moldy, different things. I have to take care of it, but I can't do anything with the object itself. I can't use it, right? Many things I'm not allowed to do with it. But what does it show? It shows the world is not ownerless. It shows there's a master of the world who says there's a lost object. Don't say losers, don't say finders keepers. That's not a Jewish concept. If it's permissible to take, fine. If it's not permissible to take, you're a thief, right? You're not allowed to do that. So comes along Canaan, and he tells his sons, love this, be sneaky, steal. We see that stealing is the inheritance of their father, right? So normally we say a person inherits good character traits, bad character traits from their parents because they're programmed, they have certain DNA. They can overcome that. Doesn't the Torah tell me? The Torah says, person will pay for the price of what their parents do. They'll pay for the sins of the parents. So we're going to ask, why? It's because my parents did something. Why? What does it do with me? Right? So the answer is, if you don't go in the way of the parents, you don't go in the negative way, you don't pay the price. Right?
Is
if
that
you go
how
in their
Ezekiel
negative way,
implied it? I mean, the soul that sins shall die in Ezekiel. I mean, where Ezekiel states that the son doesn't pay for the parent, and the
that's
parent
only, the
doesn't.
Gemara says that's only if the son does not go in the negative ways.
I see.
Because a person is programmed. Let's say they have certain biases.
Disposition.
I'll give you an example. A parent,
Reputation.
let's say both parents, or one of the parents is an alcoholic. Right? Let's say they're an alcoholic or they're a drug abuser. They say statistically, exponentially, their kids are going to have more of a bias towards it. In other words, the odds that they could do the same thing are much greater. Much, much greater. Now, you're going to say, what could they do? They're brought up in that environment. So I would encourage anybody to watch, the YouTube video that Nissim Black, right, who's a rapper, right? He converted. Listen to his story. His parents were drug addicts. Yeah, they got busted a whole number of times. The place was a drug den. He admitted on himself. I'm not saying anything anyone doesn't know. He said on himself, I should never be alive today. I shouldn't be alive because of what went on. But he came out of it. Right? He became a big Bible thumper, a big Christian, whatever, and eventually came to Judaism. Right? But based on what he saw and what he went through, what were the odds he wasn't going to be the same? Someone who grows up in a mafia family. The chances of them not being in the mafia, not without anyone putting a gun to their head, right? Who knows? You have more of a bias. But if we're programmed a certain way, and our parents are, even if they, let's say, abuse their children psychologically, they say things, they put them down, they destroy them, as we said, the marshmallow generation, they just beat them down. You're no good. You'll never be good. Parents, for better or for worse, they're the biggest influences on their kids. The biggest influences. And kids are very bright. They see the good things, they see the bad things. Right? Say, wow, my parents can do this, and they say this, why can't I do it? Right? And there's some kids that go off. Some Jewish kids, religious kids go off because they see contradictions. Right? It's another reason why kids can go off, because they say, do as I say, not as I do. Right? So they give him mixed messages. I know someone grew up in a more modern Orthodox home, and he tells his kid, he comes home, you got to review, you got to learn. And the father is reading the paper, watching TV. So what kind of message does the kid get? It gets a negative message. Right? When a kid gets a negative message, and he sees religious people get caught doing this, doing that, doing the other thing, he says, why should I try and be good? Why should I be good over here? They're doing all these terrible things. So why can't I enjoy it? Why is it do as I say, not as I do? Right? But that contradiction in terms is unbelievably great, and it causes disaster. Absolute disaster in the kids. Right? So here we say the inheritance over here that Canaan gives to his kids is totally negative. Totally negative. So if they have a certain bias towards that, what do you want? It's in my genes. You're right. So God puts a lot of things in our genes. It's called an anger gene. It's called eating too much gene. It's called being a miser gene. It's called watching CFL gene. That's twice. Whatever those bad genes may be, doesn't God want us to overcome them? He doesn't want us to act on them, but I could use an excuse. I could get upstairs after 120 years and get thrashed around. I'm going to say, God, before you thrash me, didn't you make me this way? Isn't that what I inherited from my parents? Isn't that what they gave me? God's going to say, okay, you're wired a certain way. But who says I wanted you to act on that? I didn't want you to act on that. Right? But you have certain biases. We all do. Some people get angry more, some people less. We're biased in many different ways, most likely what we saw, what we heard, what we went through. Right? So based on all that, I am who I am because of my environment. because of what I see. The problem is 90% of the people in the world, the biggest question they may ever ask in their lifetime is putting ketchup and mustard on my hot dog. They're holding nowhere spiritually. So you're going to say, so I fell in the same trap. Exactly the same trap. Big into sports, big into movies, this, that, all these different things, right? Throwing didn't help me in anything in many ways, right? But at the end of the day, somehow I came out of it, right? So people can come out of it. But 90% of world Jewry, they're holding nowhere. They're destroyed spiritually. 60, 70, 80% into marriage. We mentioned this many times. But we're a product of our environment. You're right. But who says I have to be as open-minded till my brains fall on the floor? Who says I have to believe everything society says? And we're brainwashed. I had someone tell me, why is it you live this restricted lifestyle? You seem 10 times more happier than me. I said, I know, it kills you. Kills you, doesn't it? Right, well, but what's the bottom?
Isn't there a bit of a principle of delayed gratification?
Why is it delayed gratification?
Well, I mean, there's always, reward, it seems, for delayed gratification and recompense for not delaying it. There's usually repercussion when you're
there
not
will be
willing.
Listen, if a person saw the truth and they push off doing anything to change, they're going to be held much more responsible. Because if they know what the truth is, how can they deny it? How can they go against what God wants? That's worse. If they grew up as a potato farmer in Idaho or in the prairies, no offense, they don't grow up in Idaho or the prairies, they don't know anything about anything, they're still liable. If they desecrated Shabbos in public, they didn't know anything about Shabbos or whatever, liable for a death penalty, get spiritually cut off. There are serious repercussions, right? But for a number of things, they'll get punished. It's not as great as if they did it on purpose. But even so, there's a 614th commandment. The 614th commandment is don't be stupid, right? Now, God's going to bring us upstairs after 120 years. He's going to ask us these questions. You're going to say, Torah? I was supposed to learn Torah. You never showed me. So there's a medrash. We'll tell you a scary medrash. There's a medrash that God, someone dies. God says, did you learn Torah? The first question a person's going to be asked. Did you learn Torah? Were you honest in business? Right? Did you learn Torah? The person says, learn Torah? How was I supposed to learn Torah? You never gave me a brain, right? I'm a 6'7" white guy, blockhead. Fell 300 feet. Unbelievable, right? Blockhead over here. No offense if it resembles anybody. But the point is, says, what are you doing? I never brain. You didn't give me a brain for Torah. You never gave me a brain for Torah. So God says, wait a minute. What did you do for a living? What did you do to make money? He said, I was a fisherman. He says, oh, very good. You were a fisherman. Could you tell me, how you trap fish? He said, sure. So he told me about all these intricate nets that he made and he sewed together, and he went out early in the morning and all these different things. So God says, I bet the same God who gave you the ability in the mindset, to trap fish, I bet he also gave you the ability to learn Torah. Imagine the embarrassment. He said, but I was a blockhead. He said, yeah, you were a blockhead, but you made a living by trapping fish. So you couldn't have been that much of a blockhead, right? You just showed me how intricately you did this. So if you got the brains for that, you got the brains for Torah also. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that, at all. God gives us an opportunity. He gives us an opportunity in this life not to get caught up in the stupidity of life, but to do what he wants, right? So it doesn't matter what our background is, right? It doesn't matter if our father is Canaan and he taught us the best thing in the world is to deceive people and to steal. You're right. It's part of my psyche. It's part of who I am. You're right. But God says, fine. So it might be more difficult for you to overcome, but I don't want you to do it. I don't want you to act on it. So a person's going to say, but that's not fair. Right? You gave me a fat gene. You gave me, I love ice cream gene. Right? Eat Ben and Jerry's. Come on. Right? You gave me all these bad genes. Well, why are we going to blame it on bad genes? We have certain things, that we are wired in a certain way, and then we experience different things. We see certain things, a lot of things we do to ourselves, There's no question. We got no one to blame but ourselves. But at the end of the day, we go through different circumstances, and all kinds of things that lead us to think a certain way, right? That's what a consumer society does. Get you to buy things you don't need, right? Get us to think a certain way, do certain things that are bad for us. People eat fast food and all this, kill you, absolutely destroy you. But we like it. It's good. Makes us feel good, right? Whatever the case is. So based on that, a person can say it's not my fault. We'll quote the Holy Three Stooges. I'm a victim of circumstance. What do you want from me? That's the way it is. That's the way I grew up. Yeah, so I grew up like everybody else. I just wasn't a former Christian. I grew up like everybody else. I mean, watching real football, right? Real baseball and all that. So I grew up like everybody else. Is it impossible to overcome it? No, it's not impossible. The more garbage you steep on your soul, does it make it more difficult? Oh, yeah. Makes it a lot more difficult. True. That mean a person can't overcome it? Doesn't mean that, right? So we mentioned before, Ivy League degree, coming to learn Torah without no knowledge, without any knowledge, right? You start from the beginning, and that's where people have to start. You don't run before you learn how to crawl, right? You don't take calculus courses if you don't know algebra or trig. You're not learning Kabbalah if you don't know the Aleph base. You got to take it step by step. The problem is, we live in an instantaneous generation.
Yeah.
We can see wars going on live. We can see all kinds of things instantaneously. We want an answer straight away. So we go to Rabbi Dr. Google, right? The Google of Rabbi. Got to think. People want answers. I do understand. It's frustrating. Something we don't understand. And before they start to think about it and try and really delve into it, they want an instantaneous answer. You got to think. People have to use their brains, right? You think about it for a few minutes. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, look around, this, that, before you ask a question, because then you have a deeper understanding over here. Right? So the point is that you're right. The father's teaching this kid how to steal, and if it becomes a thief, it's not his fault. Well, whose fault is it? Don't we have free choice? We have free choice. Anyone putting a gun to his head to steal? No. He likes it. He likes the thrill of the chase. Doesn't want to get caught. Okay. Right? So what's he going to do? He enjoys it. But doesn't he know deep down? Doesn't he know deep down it's forbidden? You're not allowed to steal. Even Noahites. Right? Non-Jews don't convert. One of the 7 Noahide laws, you're not allowed to steal. Even a small amount, it's not worth anything. You're not allowed to steal. Everybody knows that. But you're going to say, come on, we've been doing this for generations. That's my family business. Mafia is my family business. We kill people. We extort, we do all kinds of things. Don't you know that's against the law? But that's our family business. So aren't they going to be held liable? Of course they're going to be held liable. You can't say, well, that's how I grew up. God says, I understand that. That's how you grew up. Who do you think put you in this family? Right? One day in the next millennium, as we always say, we're going to see other Mishnahs in Pirkei Avos. And it says you're born against your will, you die against your will. In parentheses, I would say you still have to live. Right? 100% you have to live. Right? So if that's the case, do I have a choice who my siblings are? No. Do I have a choice? Who my parents are? No. Do I have a choice what my socioeconomic situation is? No. Got to put my best foot forward. I'm not in control. There are many, many things we don't control. So what? God knows what he's doing. But a lot of things we do to ourselves as well. A person can be wired a certain way, and guess what? They can have the ability to overcome. Even if you want to tell me, we'll get really controversial. I don't know if you can put this on the Roku network, right? But the first topic I did on Tanakh Talk, controversial issues, was about homosexuality. Now, some people will say, that a doctor once say, there's a gene. There's a homosexual gene. Let's say that's true. I doubt it, but let's say that's true. Even if I would agree that's true, that only means the person has, a certain bias towards that, or towards greed, or towards fill in the blank, right? Wanting to sleep late, eating a lot, whatever. We can be wired in different ways. But even if you're wired in a certain way, as we mentioned, God says, I'm not interested, you do this. So why'd you wire me that way? No, that's not the question. The question is after the fact. God knows what he's doing, right? We mentioned before all these ideas of divine providence. God knows exactly what he's doing. People have different biases, fine. And if they're good, very good. If they're bad, who says he wants me to act on it? I have to take responsibility, right? We'll use an example, a modern day example, but it's a little bit aged, but you'll get it because you know what's going on back then. We'll take Mike Tyson as an example, right? We've thrown him under the bus a few times, but we'll throw him under the bus again, right? Mike Tyson got accused for rape, got put in jail. And Alan Dershowitz put him on the stand. I'm not exactly sure why. Put him on the stand and basically said, everybody knows I'm an animal. And what was this woman doing in my hotel room at 3 a.m? I don't think that's a really good defense. He got convicted, right? Just because she's in your hotel room at 3 a.m. doesn't mean anything should go on that she doesn't want. And that you're allowed to do whatever.
Doesn't change.
And that you're allowed to do whatever you want, but you can't make an excuse and say, well, everybody knows I'm an animal. That's how I was brought up. I was raised on the streets. Blah, blah. You're right. Okay, you had a disadvantage. I would agree, and I think most people would agree, he had a major disadvantage. Okay? But who says he's allowed to be a thug? And if he wouldn't have been a boxer, he would have been a thug. He said it himself. Number of times. He himself would have been an absolute thug. Okay? Right? We'll call it spade over here. But who says God wants him to do that? Just because he has that tendency, he's going to say, what do you want from me? After 120 years, God, did you make me that way? Did you put me in this situation? Right. He's put in that situation. Right? It wasn't his choice. But he was put in that situation, no different than Nissan Black. Nissan Black was able to overcome it. And he used what he went through in order to channel it in a positive way. Right? This guy, certainly not. So you're going to say, no, I looked into things and this and that. Everyone has the ability to see. All you have to do is open your eyes. And if you don't want to open your eyes, you want to stick your head in the sand, like an ostrich, okay? Right? You can say all the cognitive dissonance you want, right? But at the end of the day, who gives us the right to act on our most terrible side and do what we think? Just because we're wired a certain way doesn't mean I have the right to do that. So what do we see over here? So these, this slave to this master, right? Canaan says, that's what you do. That's what you do. Right? That's the inheritance to his kids. Right? So he's going to say, so why should I get punished? I should never get punished over here because that's the way I was wired. Big deal. So what? That's the way you're wired. God doesn't say I want you to act on it. Right? So we see that slaves steal. As we mentioned before, that's why they buy the master in the first place. And the master doesn't protest, because if they do, what's going to happen if the master protests over here? We saw before that if a master sees that the slave now, is starting to steal and he doesn't say anything, he himself is liable. He's got to say something. Right? But what's he worried about? If I come down too hard, what's the slave going to do? He's going to leave. He's going to flee. He's going to go away. So, the person will say, I'm afraid to protest over here. Because I want to have a balance. I want to have a balance over here. I want to make sure this person is going to get what he needs. And he's going to go in the right direction. But if I become too harsh, then he's going to leave and he'll never become who he needs to become. He'll never get over this. Now, there's a problem over here. And the problem is someone who's got the ability to protest, but does not. The Gemara says they're going to be punished by the sin of the person does the transgression. Right? They're going to be taken to task. Now, Person can say, well, we don't know how to rebuke today. But that's not an excuse. That's not enough an excuse to say, you know what? Just because we don't know how to rebuke, that means I'm exempt. Problem is, if I don't rebuke, then we're responsible for this person's actions, even if we know 100% they're not going to listen. If I know 100% they're not going to listen, you're going to tell me they'll hate me more. They'll hate Judaism more. Why bother? And the answer is because I can't stand around and watch someone transgress and not say anything. Even if they're not going to listen. Even if they'll hate Judaism more. Right? I have an obligation. Right? 100% obligation. Not only that, but the onus is going to fall on us because we were too chicken liver to say anything. Doesn't matter if they're not going to listen. Doesn't matter if they put you down. Right? They make fun of you. And they say, oh, that's your opinion. And, keep your opinions to yourself. That doesn't mean you don't have to give rebuke. Right? The Torah tells me clear. You have an obligation to give rebuke. People use it as an excuse, but we don't know how to give rebuke. True. Even if we don't know how to give rebuke, doesn't that mean I just let things go on? I told people certain things, they didn't like it, too bad. I made that clear. You say, well, we can agree to disagree. No. Not about agreeing to disagree. I think you're wrong. Okay, that's your opinion. And the Torah backs me up. And the rabbis back. Okay, that's your opinion. Right? Doesn't mean you don't say anything. Someone once told me, they said, knock me down and say, fine, get off your pedestal. Like, no one's interested. Fine. But you know what? So why are you getting hot under the collar? Because I just put you down. I just knocked you around. You got nothing to answer. I understand why you're upset. That doesn't mean I'm going to say what you want me to say. You're married to a non-Jew. You want me to say that's okay? Not going to happen. You want me to tell you your kids are Jewish? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Right? Just like Mordechai, the only person refused to bow down to Mr. Haman himself in the book of Esther. Right? Haman's got power. He's got fame. He's got money. He's got all these things. He walks in a room, everyone bows down. One Jew refuses to bow down. It's not worth anything to him. He's got everything. Right? He's got his sons, his dukes in different places. He's got a tremendous consolidation of power. Not to mention wealth and all these other things. One Jew doesn't bow down. Who cares? He's an old Jew, believes in old laws. So what? It's okay, doesn't bow. He says, what is all this worth to me? What is all my money and all my power? One person doesn't bow down. So I'm not only going to kill him, I'm going to kill his entire people. Right? But what God is goad? What God is goad is Mordechai knew exactly who Haman was. Haman was a barber in a certain town for 22 years. Mordechai reminded him of that. He reminded that he was really a slave to Mordechai. He reminded him of a bunch of things that Haman couldn't stand. Right? Why couldn't he stand it? Because it was absolute truth. And he didn't want to hear the truth. So you got people, I would tell people, listen, 90% of the Jews in the world are like you. Less than 10% are like me. So what do you care what I have to say? They say, I really don't care. So what are you getting upset for? What are you getting upset for? You know why? Because you have a conscience. You have what we call that spark of a Jew inside you. And it bugs you. And it bugs you that one Jew won't bow down to you. It won't say it's okay. Right? And that bugs people. Totally bugs people. Why? I don't have to say anything. I can act the way I do, and they're still offended. Why? Because they know what the truth is. They can poo-poo it. They can make fun. They can say, oh, is that one of the laws? Yeah, it is. Oh, is that this? Yeah. They can make fun of it as much as they want. But you know what? The bottom line is, why are they making fun of it? Because they want to make themselves look better. Right? They don't want to, what does somebody care if a fanatic somewhere on the other side of the world says what you're doing is wrong? So I'm a fanatic. I've been called a lot of things. A fanatic's a good compliment, right? They'll say he's a fanatic. Well, who cares? So what are you getting so upset about? Because deep down inside, it's true, right? You wouldn't, if someone Hare Krishna comes along and says, oh, you're going to fry, and this, they don't take them seriously, right? They don't believe what they have to say. They don't care, right? It doesn't matter. right? They don't believe in Christianity. A Christian can say something, try and bring them, to Christianity. They're not even going to give them the time of day. Now, to me, they may not give the time of day also, right? But deep down, what I'm going to say to them is going to hurt 10 times more than these other people. Because these other people, they say, they're not going to like to stand on. There's no truth in what they have to say. Not even close. So what do you care what I say? What do you care this fanatic, living in Israel says? You know why you care? Because deep down. Deep down I struck a raw nerve, which I'm very good at, by the way. Ticking people off. Extremely good at that. So why is the person going to get upset at this one nut? At this one nut. Why he's going to get upset? Just like Haman. Haman, with all the wealth and all the power. One Jew! One old Jew refuses to bow. Okay. So he refuses to bow, big deal. But everyone else is bowing down, right? The new idol worship of the day. Walks in the room, everyone on the floor. Walks out of the room, everyone gets up. Walks back in, everyone on the floor. Right? That was the new idol worship of the day. Comes along Mordecai and says, I ain't doing it. It ain't going to happen by me. And Haman knows who Mordecai is, and Haman understands the truth. And he's so seething mad and rip-roaring mad, all the money, everything not worth spit in my language, and he's going to make Mordecai pay. Not only Mordecai, right? Not enough, I'm going to kill Mordecai. I'm going to wipe out his whole nation. Why is that? Very simple. Because Mordecai struck a raw nerve. Because Mordecai told him the truth. And he stuck it in his face. And they don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear that. Right? So now, person doesn't want to hear it. So there are times we have to give rebuke. I'm not saying every single time, right? But you have to know when. You have to know when to give rebuke. When to put someone in their place. And they have to know that the Torah is true. They don't like it. They call you names. So what? Don't we say sticks and stones? Right? It doesn't matter. Let people say what they want. You know what the truth is. They say, well, we can agree to disagree. No, get off your high pedestal. You're not talking to your student. You're not talking to these non-Jews who don't have a brain in their head. Get off your pedestal. I don't have to listen. That's what someone told me. Not exactly that language, but very similar. Get off your high pedestal. Say, you don't have anything to say. So why are you getting upset? Why are you getting upset? Because I struck a raw nerve. And what was the raw nerve that I struck? I delegitimized your marriage. I delegitimized your kids. Right? It's painful. I understand why it's painful. Right? It doesn't mean I have to say everything is good. Not only that, I can't say it's good. It's forbidden. We'll take it one step further. Person works wherever they work, and they have a fellow worker is gay. Right? And getting married. Are you allowed to say happy marriage? No. Can't flatter him. It's forbidden. Totally forbidden. Right? People are not necessarily aware of this. They say, no, live and let live. Really? I'm not allowed to flatter someone who's doing the Torah prohibition for Jews and non-Jews. Right? That's forbidden for non-Jews also. Right? So therefore, how am I allowed to say, that's great. I want to wish him mazel tov. Right? I want to say congratulations. I'm not allowed to say that.
Yeah, or encourage. When is it flattery and when is it encouragement? I mean,
Same thing. Right? There was a whole case years ago when Mr. Obama, last thing he did was push through same-sex marriages through the Supreme Court. So a woman who was a clerk, remember the story? She was a clerk. She didn't want to push the papers. Right? And they said, you got an obligation. You work here. You work for the municipality. She said, but I don't believe in it. It's against my religion. Right? She got a lot of flack. Right? There was someone who had a cake business or a flower business. Two guys come in and say, we want a flower arrangement for us. Well, we're getting married. And it's like, I'm not, forget it.
He refused to serve them,
He refused to serve them. They sued him. So what do you mean? You can't do that. That's discrimination. I don't even know why that gets off the, I can serve anybody I want, right? Or I can decide not to, right? But what do they say? No, it's discrimination, right? You go, we have a certain behavior. It's not our problem. You don't like it. It's too bad. You have an obligation to serve us. So I do understand on one side, people decide who they're going to serve, who they're going to cater to. I can see that, a lot of people could get upset by it, and then you won't have, proper commerce because then everyone's got their own biases, blah, blah, blah. So we have to be as open-minded until our brains fall on the floor. We have to serve everybody. Any deviant. Doesn't matter. We have to serve everybody. Who says? Right? Am I allowed? I'll take it another step further. You're going to hate this. And a lot of people are going to hate this, but too bad. Am I allowed to say, as a Jew, it shouldn't apply to a non-Jew, right? But it definitely applied to a Jew. Am I allowed to say, TB12, the greatest football player to live? I love the way he plays, right? There's a Torah prohibition. The Torah prohibition is called lo techanin. There are two opinions what that means. One opinion is that I'm not allowed to give a non-Jew the ability to buy land in Israel, which we see that doesn't, that goes on today as well. But that's forbidden. That's forbidden. That you're not allowed to do. And there's another prohibition. That means I'm not allowed to give chen, to give, benevolence, to say that an evil person, right, or let's say a non-Jew, an athlete, I'm not allowed to say, and flatter this person for what he does. Now, a person's going to ask the question, why not? What's the big deal? I'm only saying I like the way he shoots a ball. I like the way he throws a football. He kicks the ball. Well, what's so bad? I'm praising the talent that God gave him. Right? But what does the Torah say? The Torah says that I don't want you to do that. Why in the world, again, what are we praising the person for? These people are not road scholars by any stretch. Yet very few, if any, right, were road scholars. But these people are not people you should emulate. Do I care, what certain athletes or what certain, let's say, entertainers? Do I really care what they say about politics and what they say about other things? Because if they weren't famous in different ways, they wouldn't. No one's going to listen to them. Nobody. Right? You got singers, other things. Their beliefs are crazy. What they say about Israel, other things. They're just nuts in general. So what do I care if they can play a guitar or they can sing? Why would I want to emulate them? Why? Right? So the comment comes on the Torah and says, so what would I answer? I would answer, you're not praising the person per se, you're just praising his athletic ability. You could even say it's God-given athletic ability. Doesn't matter how hard they work, whatever. You can praise God at the same time. So what does God say? No. These people are not to be looked up to. Right? Even if it's just based on how they act. And I don't care what they do in their social life. I don't care how deviant they are. Comes on the Torah and says, no. Torah says there's no such thing as compartmentalization. Right? We're going to go against Aristotle. Because Aristotle said, it's Aristotle who does all kinds of terrible things. Is Aristotle one of the greatest minds of all time? Right? To us, there's a contradiction. If you had bad character traits, I don't care what your knowledge is. Doesn't matter what your knowledge is. Yeah. If you have bad character traits, and you go against what Torah says, what do I care if you have 150 IQ? What's the difference? Right? So praising somebody like that, Torah says we're not allowed to. Right? Absolutely not allowed to. Why? Because who says I should emulate somebody like that? Again, you're praising their ability to hit a puck, to hit a baseball, to shoot a basketball.
Dunk a basketball.
That's what you're praising, right? You're not praising the person per se. You're praising that ability. God says, I don't want you to praise that. I don't want you to have anything to do with that. I don't want you to have anything connection to it. Now, we do understand there are two separate things. There are two separate things going on. There's a person who's the athlete, right, which a lot of them, bad sportsmanship, all kinds of negative things they say and they do, right? But there's the person who's the athlete or, the actor, actress, whatever. And there's the person, what they do behind the scenes. Now, most people would say, beyond the shadow of a doubt, I absolutely care less. I absolutely care less by what they do in their background. What they do behind the scenes. Who cares what they do? I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in how they shoot a ball. Now, Judaism says not that way. Judaism says the person's a whole person. It's not just the way he shoots a ball. It's the whole person entirely. Right? So now, the person's a womanizer, does all kinds of terrible things, then what do I care the way he shoots the ball? They go hand in hand. But other people would say no. Other people would say totally disagree. They'll never understand this because they'll say, I don't care about the person. I could care less about what the person does. I want to see him shoot a ball. I want to see him shoot a puck. That's all I want to see. Right? But think about it logically. Both things go hand in hand. If someone is disgusting how they treat others, why am I paying or giving money to help to support this person? Why would I do that? Person's a terrible person. Right? There will be repercussions. Right? Somebody's supposed to get a big contract and they sucker punch, their girlfriend, drag her into an elevator, right? And it's all, it goes viral. That guy's finished. Never play a game again. Right? So, there are a lot of things that, okay, they will pay a price, if they're caught doing certain things, right? But even so, let's just say they cheat on each other, other things. Why is that a virtue for me? Why is that something I would look up to? You got to say, I don't care. I like to watch their movies, right? We'll bring up Mel Gibson. He said a lot of stupid things, right? A lot of stupid things. Why would I even watch this movie now? Why would I? Because you don't care. But it depends what, if it hits home or not. And if a person, is a secular Jew and he says all kinds of things against Israel, why would you help support him? Why? So some people would say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There will be certain things that
I guess I'm still trying to understand the difference between flattery and encouragement.
Flattery, no, encouragement. You're not encouraging a person necessarily to do negative things, right? You're not encouraging Mel Gibson to say anything against Israel. You're not encouraging that, right? By watching his stuff, you're flattering him, right?
Speaking of which, the new Matrix movie comes out this week.
So, so if a person doesn't like Keanu Reeves, right, or whatever, and he does terrible things behind the scenes, don't watch it, right? Don't buzz it. No, but I like what he does, this and that. So, again, Judaism is about the complete person.
Yeah.
It's about the whole person. So, if I support what he does, that doesn't mean I encourage his activity. Right? Not at all. You take someone, you take somebody, like Doc Gooden of the Mets years ago, or Darryl Strawberry. They were coke addicts. Right? I'm not encouraging that. I'm not encouraging them what to do. Oh, but if I go to their games, I buy their t-shirts and all that, aren't I putting money in their pocket? Aren't I supporting them? So there's a difference. There's a subtle difference. The difference is that by supporting them and seemingly flattering them, that doesn't mean I'm encouraging their negative behavior.
Yeah.
I'm not encouraging their negative behavior, but at the same time, I'm saying what this person does is okay. Now, you're going to grasp at straws over here. Because, I'll give another example. Another example. Take someone like Charles Barkley, right? They call him the Mon Rob the rebound, right? That's what they used to call him. It's certainly what they used to call him. Now, he's a commentary for TNT. He's been there for years. I don't know if most people know. He was at a game. Someone said something to him. One of the fans. And he spit on somebody. And he ended up spitting on like a 4 or 5-year-old girl. You want to emulate that behavior? You want to listen to what this schlub has to say? I care less what he has to say. There's no excuse for that type of behavior. Got angry at a fan. I get it. So what? Sticks and stones. That means you have the right to spit on a fan? That he's paying your salary? I mean, I can make this go further, right? It's very easy to pick apart these things, right? But I'm not going to bother. I could use a number of examples. Because I went to a game and I saw him play, does that mean I'm encouraging his behavior? I'm not encouraging his behavior. He did something that's egregious, right? Ray Rice did something egregious, right? By sucker punching his girlfriend and went viral, dragging her into an elevator. That's pretty egregious. Never play another game ever. Maybe one of these other leagues or whatever. He ain't playing in the NFL. It's over.
CFL,
It's over.
maybe.
Not even the CFL, right? You're never going to make money from football. Never going to happen, right? Okay, that's something egregious. But you're going to say, I didn't encourage him to do that. I didn't tell him to do that. So how can you support somebody like that? Again, there's a differentiation. There's what he does off the field. It's how he plays the game. Judaism looks at the complete person. If he's got bad character traits, I don't care what he does on the field. Doesn't matter what he does on the field. Other people will say, I don't care what he does off the field. But he goes against a lot of things you believe in. But they say it doesn't matter. You know why it doesn't matter? Because it's irrelevant what he does off the field. You're going to say that about, Aristotle, goes way back. You're going to say that about Aristotle, you're going to say about others. Right? It's a major problem. So we have to come out and say, I don't care how he plays. I don't care how great he plays. We have to say what they do is forbidden. Right? What they do off the court is forbidden. Right? Not only that, it's not something to emulate. Because a person says, TB12, unbelievable, greatest football player of all time. Right? So he may be squeaky clean in, what he does outside of football. Maybe. Okay. So what? Many other people aren't. So now you want to grab at straws and no, support this one, not this one. You won't be able to watch a game. If you knew what half the people did, you would never watch it. Never. But see, people aren't holding there. Right? You're not encouraging them to act like buffoons. Right? To act like animals. You're not encouraging. You know when you see this the most? In the off season. The off season of football. That's when you see it in other sports. You see how many people get busted, fights in bars and strip clubs, other things, all the time. All the time. Right? It goes on. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Right? Am I encouraging that behavior? No. But see, we're putting, how do these teams, how do they make money? A lot of it's from TV, right? A lot of it's people in the stands. A lot of it's what they spend on T-shirts and other things. So you can say in a certain way, you're paying their salary, right? Now let's make it even more graphic. Let's say a person loves this player, whatever. They go to games, this and that. This player goes out and he murders someone. Are you liable? Someone's gonna say, "What are you kidding? Get off your cotton picking head. You're not liable." I didn't tell the person to go out and shoot someone, right? I didn't encourage the person to do it. You're right. You didn't encourage him, but you put money in his pocket. Right? So according to Torah law, there's nothing to talk about. Because at best, it's just, it's not even a grum. It's not like you did something to cause him to do something. Right? That you didn't even do that. It's so far removed. It's like 10 times, a billion times removed. So I'm going to be liable for that? Never. Never. Right? I'm never going to be liable for that. At the same time, you're putting money in their pocket. You're not encouraging them to do that. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. Right? So therefore, I'm flattering the person. Doesn't matter what he, in his private life. And if his private life is bad, and I only say, I love the way he kicks the ball, you're still flattering the person by saying how good he is. Again, use Ray Rice, use Mike Tyson. There are a million examples. You use Will Chamberlain, all the women he slept with. Him and Magic Johnson, and he's a time bomb ticking with AIDS. He never got full-blown AIDS. What could I do? All these women threw themselves at me. Yeah, that's an excuse. Why you were married? Scumbag that he is. Okay, so I just like the way he plays. Forget the way he plays. Forget the way he plays. Right? It's the whole person. Right? So therefore, what are you saying? You're saying what he does is okay. So you're gonna grasp at straws. No, I like this. I don't like this. Person like this, I don't like. Or the other thing. So where do you draw the line?
Can I ask on the flip side?
Yeah.
What about when it comes to legitimate men of character? I mean, when is it all right to speak highly of such? I mean,
it's never, because if they're not going in the Torah way, so what? So what if they're a Rhodes Scholar? So what if everything they do is squeaky clean? But you know what? But they spit in God's face on a regular basis, Jew or non-Jew. So why am I looking up to them? Why are they saying, wow, Rhodes Scholar, beautiful? Why am I looking up to them? What's my purpose? Who should I be looking up to? Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Akiva, right? These are the people, Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, great Torah scholars. These people are bums. I hate to say it. All these people, they're all bums. You know why they're bums? I'll tell you why they're bums. Because people look at the wrong things. They look at the wrong things. I don't care if he's squeaky clean, right? TB12 may be squeaky clean, right? He maybe, might have an unbelievable work ethic. Larry Joe Bird, same thing. Unbelievable work ethic, this and that. Why should I emulate such a person? Why would I want to emulate such a person? What has he done for Torah? What has he done as a non-Jew? Right? They can be very philanthropic, very true. But just because he shot a basketball or did other things, that's I should put him on a pedestal. Why should I put him on a pedestal? So you're going to say, everybody's not that bad. They may have some good character traits. Okay. They may have good character traits. But let me ask you the following question. If I had a choice, I built my sukkah. I built my sukkah, I put my white, my white thing around. I put my white thing around. One second. I put my white thing around my walls of my sukkah. Who are the pictures I'm putting up in my sukkah? A lot of people will put up the Western Wall, put up, different pictures of the four species, right? The lulav, the esrog, my palm, my willows, and my myrtle leaves, right? But who are the pictures they're going to put up? They're going to put up great rabbis. That's who they're going to put up. That's who they're going to put up. Previous generations, well before, they're not putting up Larry Joe Bird. They're not putting up, Ray Rice. They're not putting up any of these great athletes from previous generations. You know why? Because they don't come up to spit to the ankles, to the crust in a great rabbi's toenails. They don't come up close to that. So why am I gonna think they're so great? So again, we get back to the same discussion. And the reason is, even if they're so squeaky clean, I guarantee they're not so squeaky clean. I guarantee a lot of these people curse. I guarantee a lot of these people do other things they shouldn't do. Right? And it's not going to be hard to figure that out. To probably find that out. Some people more squeaky clean than others. Fine. Right? Does that mean they're going according to what God wants? Does that mean they're going to the right path? Certainly not. Certainly not. Maybe there'll be a couple. Maybe. That have certain character traits that, we can exemplify. Maybe. The vast majority, worth nothing. They're worth nothing because of what they do. Most of the world, by the way, the non-Jewish world, when the Messiah comes, they're not holding by the Noahide laws. That's it. They're going to get wiped out. Doesn't matter how much money they gave to charity, other things. They're liable for a death penalty. It's over. Right? What do I care? They're a Rhodes Scholar. Yeah, I guarantee. Some people think, I'll give one example. People cheat on their taxes. They might be good people. Why do they cheat on their taxes? Because they don't want Uncle Sam to get 33%. They want to hide money. Right? Someone, let's say, has an all-cash business. They have an all-cash business. You know what that means? They can declare whatever they want. And I guarantee they'll declare less. So they don't have to pay as much as taxes and hide other money. Now, they could have a lot of good reasons why they do it. They could all be legit, but there's only one problem. It's illegal. It's totally forbidden. Right? If it's a legal loophole, that's a different issue. Right? But I don't think it would be very hard at all. And I would be very good at this. I don't think it would be very hard at all to find flaws, in people's characters. In people's character traits. Now, they could say, I can find flaws in yours. Right? Nobody's perfect. But if you don't have an anchor,
it's easy enough to criminalize or vilify something, anyone. And
you're right. But I'm saying, but according to Torah, it's that much easier. You know why? Because you're gonna, here's a list. Here's a list of things that non-Jews have to keep. Some say there are 40, some say there are 50, some say a little bit more, right, etc. Right? And if you would ask a lot of people, how many of these things, according to the letter of the law, do you keep? It's over. It's a non-starter. We're not perfect. I'm not saying we're perfect, right? You can vilify anyone, you're right. But when you're talking in the eyes of the Torah and what's permissible and what's forbidden,
right?
These people might be great people. They might be exemplary, but guess what? They bow down to a cow, right? Or they bow down to idols. So what? They give millions to charity, even to good charities. What do I care? They're liable for a death penalty for non-Jews, right? For Jews as well, right? So it's not going to be that hard. Not going to be. We don't have to nitpick over here, right? Now, by us, we have a lot to work on. We have a tremendous amount we have to work on anger, bad character traits, and all these things, right? Very easy to nitpick on us as well. But you know what? There's a thing called repentance. We have the ability to repent. We're not allowed to do something wrong and say, okay, I'll just repent. Right? I'll transgress and then I'll repent. There's no such thing. If you did it, it's one thing. Can't do it on purpose. You're not allowed to do it on purpose. Right? So these people, first of all, they don't think they're doing anything wrong. If they don't think they're doing anything wrong, they don't have repentance. There's no such thing as repentance by them. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. Oh, they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, maybe something else. Right? But again, even the best of the best. Even the best of the best. Right? When it comes to morality, and you don't have an anchor, as we mentioned before, you don't have a rudder without an engine, you go around in circles. Right? Towards the anchor. If you don't have anchor, nobody's going to be moral. Nobody. And even if you hold by the Torah, you got to work very hard. You have to work very hard to keep the garbage out. So now I would ask you, the most righteous of the most righteous. Some of them will be considered like the righteous of the non-Jews. No question. Right? Not the people I'm thinking about. And probably not the people you're thinking about. They're not so squeaky clean. I'm not talking about people do things egregiously. That's easy. That's easy. That's a dime a dozen. That's a no-brainer. Right? But you got other people saying, I'm not so bad. Right? Someone will tell me I'm a good person. Forget about getting the definition of good. I would ask them one very simple question as a Jew. Jews speak badly against others. Jews speak Lashon Hara against others. What are they going to say? It's the way of the world, of course. Right? But they deserve it. For this reason, that reason, it may be true. Right? But there are 36 prohibitions in one shot. Everybody does it. God, I don't care if everybody does it. You're not allowed to do it. It's forbidden. And they'll justify it. I don't have to go much further than that. It's a common thing that most people, unfortunately, transgress unless you learn the law. Now, for a non-Jew, they're not liable per se. Right? I would call it a moral imperative. Because it's never good to put someone down to make yourself look better.
Right.
Right? But someone says, yeah, I'm a good person. I don't cheat on my wife. I don't cheat on my taxes. I donate some of my time. I give money to charity. Yeah, these are good things. These are good things. But guess what? If you ever embarrassed someone in public, if a person embarrassed someone in public, right, that's similar to murder. The Rabbeinu Yonah in Shari Tshuva, the Gate to Repentance, says that even though it's an offshoot of murder, you lose your portion of the world to come. But it's not murder. The Rambam says by murder, you don't lose your portion of the world to come. If this is an offshoot, for sure you don't lose your portion of the world to come. Comes along, Rabbeinu Yonah says it's so severe. As the Talmud says, you turn red, then you turn white. Or vice versa. You embarrass someone, when they turn red, it's like murder. It's like you killed them. And anyone who's ever been embarrassed in public, they need a rock to go hide under. Some people never get over it. Never, ever get over it. Now, if you'd ask someone, did you ever embarrass someone in public? They'll say that was embarrassing. They took it the wrong way. Really? Come on, I could use that as an example. Right? And there are people who would say, can you think of anything where someone might have been embarrassed in front of other people? You made fun of them. Say, no, the person was too sensitive.
Oh, I've known most of my days, Rabbi. I've known people that are just derogatory. It doesn't matter. Their version of what is funny is making derogatory remarks about others.
So people think, no, I was just kidding. But see, they'll say you're too sensitive. You're right, I'm too sensitive, but you know what? That's below the belt. Give another example, very simple example. Right? Someone who converts to Judaism, you're not allowed to remind them they were a non-Jew. A Baal Tshuva, someone like myself, you can say, hey, I remember you used to eat shrimp. I remember you used to do this. It's a Torah prohibition called Onas Devarim. You're not allowed to make fun of someone because of their past. Torah, a very serious Torah prohibition. First of all, if you would ask most people, do you want to be reminded of what you did in the past? I don't think so. Do you want to remind me? It's like saying, okay, I'm going to take 10 of your best transgressions. Yeah, what do you think about that? You're going to hide under a rock. You don't want to hear that. It's embarrassing, especially if you totally change your life. Totally embarrassing. Right now, people do it. Probably very common. Oh, you're holier than thou. Right? People tell me I can't say anything to them because I knew who I was before. They won't listen to a word I say. Okay. Right? But when they remind you, oh, I remember you used to do this, even if I don't get offended and I blow it off, they're over a serious Torah prohibition. By a convert also, no different. Right? Now, do people say things? All the time. See, I don't have to nitpick. I don't have to vilify someone. I don't have to I don't have to look very hard. Because there are major things that people do. They don't have any idea and they don't really care. And they'll make excuses. Right? They'll embarrass someone in public. They'll make a million excuses like, come on, we're just having fun over here. People could commit suicide because of these things. Oh. And it's happened. They felt so bad about what they did, they never get over it. And people just had a little bit of fun at their expense. A little bit of fun killed them. And they're all responsible. Everyone who sat there, watched and laughed with it, they're all responsible. Right? It's not an uncommon thing. Kids are brutal, making fun of others.
Oh, they think it's a way of life, especially people. Teenagers,
whatever. They could destroy people. Make them never want to come to school. Forget about low self-esteem. They absolutely destroy them. Right? But they don't care. It's fun. How many people out there have been bullied in school? Lots, probably. And if they've been bullied and made fun of, a lot of times they don't get over it. I'm not saying they commit suicide from it, but unless they go to a therapist or whatever, they never get over it. Or they bully other people because of what they went through. It's a very common thing. Right? Things that were done to them, they do to other people. People do to other people. Right? Because it's so much a part of them. That's why they say someone is a pedophile. Most likely they were abused when they were younger. Right? I think that's been proven. But, people say that I'm good. Again, all I have to do is speak about Lashon Hara. Onus Devarim. These type of things. Forget getting to the nitty-gritty of other things. Right? I think those two are a good example where the person's not going to come out squeaky clean. Not at all. Do you ever make fun of someone who's going to say no? Right? Nobody's going to say no. Do you think, okay, you did X, let's say. Let's say you know something about what someone did. How do you think the other person felt? No, it was just fun. It was this. They were overly sensitive. Why is that an excuse? What you said is well below the belt. I had somebody once say something to me and my wife, and we gave him a snappy answer. Right? 30 seconds, gave a snappy. It's like, oh, you guys are tough. Person never bothered us again. Good. They made a well below the belt comment. I said, you really think I'm going to sit there and take this? Why should I take this? I have what to answer. We answered them for the person in their place. Right? Who says you're allowed to say whatever you want? I mean, it was a well below the belt comment. Where you think I'm not going to say anything? It's like, oh, you guys are tough. I can say a lot of things to offend people. Very easy. Right? You gotta be sensitive of somebody's, thought. Why do people make fun of Orthodox Jews? Let's say better. Why do secular Jews make fun of Orthodox Jews? Even if the Orthodox Jews don't do anything against them. Again, it's Mordechai not bowing down to Haman. And they'll say certain things. If I were to say that against blacks, against Chinese people, etc., they call me a racist. They would absolutely tar and feather me and call me a racist. But you say it against all Orthodox Jews. I made a comment to a family member once. I said, you're making a comment against all Orthodox Jews and you're including me. It's like, no, you're different. No, you're including me as well. That's offensive. If I were to make a comment about secular Jews, and I would say, most secular Jews smell. You don't think people come down to me like a whole bag of potatoes and kill me? That's racist. How do you have a right to say that? and secular Jews do it all the time, vilifying Orthodox Jews. Now, we may do it to ourselves. We may do the wrong thing. We may say the wrong thing, whatever, right? But why isn't that racist? They'll say, or they'll say, someone will say an anti-Semitic thing, right? We mentioned many shows ago, right? Julian Edelman, right? And this basketball player and all that. You say, he made one statement. It's an anti-Semitic statement, what he said. It's an anti-Semitic statement, nothing to talk about. You're calling a spade, you're calling it what it is. When people throw around anti-Semitism, you say something against the Jewish people, and you say, the Jews, they're in charge of Hollywood. The Jews this, the Jews that. What? First of all, if it's a false statement, you're saying something against Jewish people, that's being racist. So we call that anti-Semitism, right? That's being racist. If a person said against blacks, against Chinese, Koreans, others, they'd call you on the spot.
Yeah.
Right? They'd call you on the spot. They say against, 6'7" white guys, okay, they call you on the spot. They call you on the spot. Nothing to talk about. So why is it permissible to do that against Orthodox Jews? Because it's okay. Because they hold it's okay. Because we're subhuman. Right? God forbid. And Rebel Wine should be well once said, the way they talk about Orthodox Jews, in Israel, as they say on the radio, government people and this and that, if you would change the name Orthodox Jew to Arab and all the negative things said, there would have been an outrage years ago. There would have been civil war years ago. So why are we free picking over here? And this is the whole, Dan and I are like two peas in a pod, and it's been a lot of fun, and certainly, all the hard work Dan puts in the background, what he does is really unbelievable. People should support him. There's no question. All the good things that he does. And 90 episodes, it's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
We still got people listening. That's even better. They say, wow, we're still a fanatic. We still got people listening. Unbelievable.
Well, that's because you're telling it like Torah says it, and we so appreciate it. And I'm not going to flatter you.
Cream puffs. We're not cream puffs over here. People
tissue
are
paper
are the real deal, and they can handle the truth, and that's what we love about what we do.
Excellent. So, folks, you can always support Rabbi Coffman at his website, orthodoxconversion.com. You can find him on Facebook and his YouTube page as well. We so appreciate all you're doing. We hope all's going well with your classes there in Israel and the ones you do go up north for. Are you on tomorrow with Tanakh Talk?
We should be on up there with Tanakh Talk and No Hide Nations at 2:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Israel time, and we're gonna still derive the No Hide laws about stealing and about other things. And whatever, Tanakh Talk, 12:30 Eastern time, 7:30 Israel time. We'll see what the topic's going to be.
Awesome. So you don't even know.
And sorry, the Book of Leviticus, chapter 15, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel
Plus,
time.
you got your Q&A during the week as well.
And plus, I got my Q&As during the week, which go back to that and all the other fun stuff that we'll do as well.
Awesome. Well, Rabbi, once again, mazel tov on your daughter getting engaged to a wonderful family, and we just hope that you feel blessed. It's exciting for us to see your joy, and that's a little infectious. And thank you for sharing that with everybody on social media. And we wish you a wonderful, wonderful week. So we're going to sign out for now, folks. I'm going to be on in about 25 minutes with Rabbi Poston. Beyond the 7, we're doing the 48 Ways to Wisdom, part 43 today with Rabbi Poston on that wonderful work. So have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we'll see you with Pirkei Avos next week, folks. Same time. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.